Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Somehow, despite Donald Trump being an alleged Russian puppet, the American tensions with Russia keep rising. Yesterday, Russian officials said relations were at their lowest point since the Cold War. Today, President Trump has set aside his old skepticism toward NATO, and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson had an unproductive meeting, apparently, with Vladimir Putin in Moscow.
Right now, we're not getting along with Russia at all. We may be at an all-time low in terms of relationship with Russia.
We need to attempt to put an end to this steady degradation, which is doing nothing to restore the trust between our two countries or to make progress on the issues of the greatest importance to both of us.
Al Mater is a Democratic strategist and former member of Hillary for America, the National Finance Committee. He says there are still plenty of warning signs that the Trump administration is too cozy with Russia. Mr. Mater joins us now. Al, thanks all for coming on.
Great to be here.
So you heard the president say the relationship is bad right now, and you heard the Russians say the very same. You saw the Prime Minister of Russia, Mr. Medvedev, say that we're as close to war as we've been in a long time. Do you believe any of this, or is this just part of the conspiracy?
I actually do. I actually found today's developments, on the one hand, discouraging, but also heartening, right? Because you see our administration speaking with one voice about Russia, and in a way that many Democrats were afraid they never would, which is to say that Russia interfered in our elections, Russia is an adversary of the United States, and you have Ambassador Haley, Secretary Tillerson, and even President Trump saying the right thing. So in that sense, it's encouraging.
So you're happy that we're moving toward war. So I guess that raises the question. Well, that's what you just said, and clearly Democrats are happy about it. They want a confrontation with Russia, and I guess the question is why? When did the Democratic Party become the war party?
Of course we're not happy we're moving toward war. My point is that I'm happy that this administration is taking Russia seriously, and Secretary Tillerson sent the right signals today in his meeting with the foreign minister.
But again, the Prime Minister of Russia said that U.S.-American relations, and I'm quoting now, are ruined and we're on the brink of armed conflict. That's bad. Why would that be heartening to you?
It's heartening in the sense that I believe during the campaign and thereafter, this president hasn't taken Russia seriously. And he has said through multiple occasions things that cause us to question whether he puts the United States' interests first. Today we saw that this administration seems to be doing that. That's what's heartening to me.
It's just strange to me, having watched politics for so long, to see the Democrats so avidly pushing for a conflict with Russia. And I'm just confused. This is the new liberal position that because the people who run the country don't respect human rights sufficiently, or they put propaganda into the American system, that we need to be in conflict with them. Is that the core of this, or something else going on? I'm honestly confused.
I think it's more complicated than that.
Okay.
I think you have people on the left who are angry about the election, and so they are pushing this. But you also have national security agencies. You have the FBI. You have Richard Burr, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, also pushing these things. We have to get to the bottom of it. And as Secretary Tillerson said today, Russia undoubtedly interfered with our elections, and there ought to be more stiffer penalties.
There's literally no evidence for that at all. None that has come into the public view that Russia in any way affected the outcome of this election. And so I guess what you're saying is that here's a new threshold. If a country attempts to influence the outcome, or if it somehow injects its propaganda into the American system, they're our enemy, and we need to have a bellicose posture with them. Is that the new standard? Because a lot of countries meet that standard, like a lot of countries, not just a few.
Look, Russia interfered aggressively in our elections. They had thousands of people and internet bots trying to proliferate news that's fake on the internet to get people's opinions to change. That's inappropriate.
What was the readership for that? Do you know?
We don't, but we have testimony.
We do have some sense, and it was basically around zero. There's no evidence that any of that information swayed a single vote. You have RT, which is the Russian finance television station, which has, I think, a daily viewership of about 30,000. Not a factor in the election at all. And so I'm thinking maybe there's something else going on here that, as a keen observer, I am missing. The animus toward Russia stems from what? A lot of countries have done what Russia did. Why are we really mad at Russia on the left? What is this really about? Do you know?
I don't think it's left or right. I think it's country first before party. I mean, you have many Republicans who believe these things. Lindsey Graham, John McCain, Richard Burr. You have Director Comey, who aggressively went after Hillary Clinton in an investigation. He's been saying these things. So I don't think this is a partisan issue so much as it's we need to get to the bottom of it and let the facts take us where they go.
The permanent establishment in Washington, very much led by the left, wants conflict with Russia. And my question, again, is why would that be good for the United States? You literally saw Democrats say that it was, quote, deeply troubling that the Trump administration alerted the Russian military before striking Syria. There are apparently Russian soldiers on that base. Would it have been better to kill some of them with the airstrikes?
So I think what you have there is people weren't sure that the administration really was putting the United States interest first. And that's why they might have made a statement like that. What you saw today, however, was a very resolute administration, one which is not going to take the slaughter of innocent children lightly, and it's going to take appropriate action.
Innocent children are slaughtered around the world every single day, and nobody says boo about it. And so I guess, look, let's just back up. I'm agnostic on the question of Russia. But explain to me succinctly, in a way no one has done so far, why being at odds with Russia helps the United States. What do we get out of that?
We should be at odds with anyone who's trying to interfere with our democratic processes and who do not have our interests at heart. That doesn't mean we have to go to war.
There is no country on earth that has our, quote, interests at heart. Countries have their own interests at heart. That's why they're countries.
We have allies, we have enemies, we have adversaries. They're different degrees.
But what does the United States benefit by taking an aggressive posture toward Russia, which has some of the world's largest energy reserves, which is an avowed opponent of Islamic terror, which is a genuine problem, I think you would concede?
Of course.
What do we get out of it? Why does the average person looking at this, why should that person be excited about moving toward war with Russia?
Nobody should be excited about that, Tucker. Don't misunderstand me. I just think that we need to take seriously what happened, and I think for a while a lot of people weren't doing that.
Okay. But again, you're not going to answer the question. What do we get out of this? Like, typically when the United States formulates a policy position abroad, the aim is to make America safer or more prosperous. In what sense does this confrontation with Russia, now ongoing, make our country safer or more prosperous?
With respect to our elections, it makes us safer in our democratic processes to make sure that their integrity is preserved. We know from testimony from
when there's no evidence that they affected the outcome at all. Not a voting machine was hacked. There's not a single person to come forward to say, you know, I changed my vote because I was watching RT last night.
So there's no evidence that Al-Qaeda or ISIS have successfully breached any of our chemical plants, but we know they look at it and try. Does that mean we shouldn't try to stop them?
But Al-Qaeda and ISIS have cumulatively killed thousands of Americans.
Absolutely.
I don't think the Russians have done so. So again, how does it make us safer to have the Prime Minister of Russia say we're, quote, on the brink of war? That seems like a very dangerous. I feel less safe than I did a month ago, thanks to cheerleading by the left, pushing this administration toward conflict.
I doubt that this administration is listening to the left, quite frankly, and I don't believe we're on the brink of war despite bellicose statements to the contrary by Russia. I don't look to Russia as to where we stand.
Well, apparently, earlier this morning, not apparently, I think, a U.S. commercial flight flying from San Francisco to Shanghai was turned away at the edge of Russian airspace, and the passengers, I know for a fact, on that flight were told an American carrier is not permitted to enter Russian airspace for, quote, diplomatic reasons. If that turns out to be true, that's a suggestion that tensions are getting to a level that is dangerous. And I would think, as a liberal and a Democrat, you would say, whoa, wait a second, this is scary, and instead you and many others are cheerleading this.
I wouldn't say that. I think that's certainly troubling. But what's heartening about today is Tillerson and his counterpart announced that they're going to move back to non-interference with respect to airspace over Syria. And that's certainly much more significant because we could have had a military confrontation, and they're backing away from that. I also think it's heartening that they seem to have agreed to continue talking. There may be bellicose statements from the Russians, but we seem to at least be trying to resolve the situation as best we can.
So China mistreats its own citizens. Dissent is crushed. Dissidents are killed. It has invaded another country and occupies it, Tibet. And it seeks our destruction. Chinese government and military has hacked into American government computers many times. We know that. It's factual.
Right.
So why aren't you pushing for sanctions against China? Why aren't you pushing for a confrontation with China? It meets all the criteria that you laid out.
Well, as you aptly point out, there's problems all around the world. What the United States does is it seeks to act when it thinks acting is in its best interest. Perhaps the United States doesn't believe that is quite in its best interest.
But why don't you think it's in our best interest? They're doing everything Russia has done and more.
I do. But I'm not the United States government. I agree with you. Human rights violations are awful wherever they happen.
So we should wage war?
Of course not.
Great to see you, Al.
Good to be here.